And welcome in, friends. Welcome back to Notes from the Edge. I'm your host, Lisa Lacey, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor. And in this space, we talk about the things we should be talking about, but aren't, the conversations we should have been having all along. And today, our special guest is Teddy Ingles. Teddy is a counselor that we're exploring today deceptively simple but profoundly difficult questions. What does it actually mean to know yourself? So, Teddy is a personal counselor whose work is rooted in creating confidential, compassionate spaces where clients can explore themselves. And, my friends, this is so very important to get to a place where you know yourself and you like what you find without judgment. Teddy's big thing is without judgment, drawing from decades of life experience and background in science, systems engineering, communication, self defense. Hello, martial artist here, Teddy, yoga, and philosophy. His approach to counseling is collaborative exploration rather than a process of fixing people. He believes that healing begins when humans or individuals feel genuinely seen, understood, and safe to tell the truth about their lives. And boy, did I live many decades not telling the truth. His work is grounded in curiosity, and in this space, we love curiosity as the number one emotional intelligence skill, emotional presence, and the belief that lasting change comes from not from someone else's answers, but discovering your own. And today on this podcast, we're going to be talking about asking ourselves different questions. Okay. Oh, that reminds me, Teddy, let me let me do the same to my phone too. Let me put it on do not disturb. Perfect. Teddy, welcome in. Welcome to Notes from the Edge. How are you today?
I'm excellent, and it's an honor to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, good. I'm honored to have you here. I love your approach to counseling. I think it's so needed. Your philosophy centers around personal responsibility and self discovery. So, if you had to answer this in one sentence, what do you believe our greatest responsibility to ourselves as human beings really is?
Respect and kindness,
Hmm. Yeah, self respect.
self
I
respect and
discovered,
kindness.
yeah, is so, so, so important. And being compassionate to ourselves. Our inner critics can be so nasty to us. So, and when we start this healing journey, we're going to be talking about what that is a little bit more today. Um, we start to set boundaries, right? And in setting those boundaries, we start to develop self respect. But I think you're right. Kindness to ourselves generates into kindness to others, but most importantly, kindness to ourselves without judgment. I love that. So you talk about counseling being an exploration. I love this. Exploration instead of a place where somebody comes to be fixed. So in your philosophy, it's not that people are broken, it's that they need to explore who they are. So what do you think most people misunderstand about what that actually looks like? What do you define as personal work?
Well, that's a great question. I think that in fundamental terms, experiential terms, people tend to look outward when they need to be looking inward to find the phenomena, the values, the engagement, which makes their soul sing.
Engagement. I love that word, engagement. Engaging with yourselves, engaging with others, engaging with life. And yeah, make your soul sing. Take that inventory of, am I really happy in this place? And if you're not, it requires one, brutal honesty with yourself. And I think that's what I love about your work as a counselor is in that personal exploration will come that radical responsibility to self, about really owning what's yours as well. So, okay, finding the right therapist. Let's talk about that because it's a practice, it's a relationship. What qualities do you hope people will look for in a counselor, therapist, psychotherapist, or support in the clinical therapeutic arena?
Well, as you well know, and you've expressed yourself clearly and provocatively, capturing not only your own ideas but a good sense of mine as well. So I'm delighted about that. I think that the basic landscape of personal work has got to be defined as something that only the individual can answer to, and especially in the age of digitization and ubiquitous real-time media, we are so connected with others. It's sometimes hard to know what's going on in your own mind and heart and cognitively and otherwise. And so I encourage people to take it all in, to cultivate a very expansive vision of self, and to ultimately answer only to themselves. Having a background in systems engineering and self-defense, as you suggested, allows for a lens to be formed that has self-checking mechanisms to put people continuously in touch with their own truth. And that's basically one's body, one's feelings. And when you practice that, it gets stronger like a muscle. And in the end, you can create a good sense of where you're coming from, as opposed to your family, your friends, your colleagues, etc. And especially embrace the notion, the edict, that no one's in life to live up to anybody's expectations.
Ain't that the truth? Drop actually expectations, period, are the thief of happiness of yourself or of others. I want to circle back to something that you said, and let me make sure I've got this open for comments, so I can see any comments that are coming through from our live viewers. We've already got one. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you? I apologize. I didn't see you on here. I just got comments open. Teddy, we've got Jeffrey with us today saying hi. So, hey, Jeffrey, thanks for joining us. I want to circle back to something you said. We have never been so connected, right? Digitally. We're so connected. We have so much information at our fingertips. But it is my theory that we have never been so disconnected from each other. And an example is a podcast is now termed long form conversation. It's a conversation that we don't have anymore, that we have now had to put a definition to. So, can you speak a little to that about how people can get more connected with themselves? What's up, Ike? How are you? Welcome in. Teddy, we've got Ike in the house today too. How can we get more connected and disconnected from this sometimes? What are your recommendations there for your clients?
That's an excellent question, a really excellent question. And so, what I'm going to say to that is that emotions, organic emotions that we feel, are continuous streams of uninterruptible feelings, whereas long form conversation comes from the world of computational cognition, where the processors are adding ones and zeros and arranging them in certain ways. And so what I think you're really getting at in addressing the phenomenon of long form conversation is the desensitization that's taking place over the digital interface, which is 5 minutes old, versus the organic, visceral interface that's billions of years old.
Visceral. Yeah. Then there's a sensualness to even a simple human conversation. It's about getting back into our bodies, back into our senses to trust ourselves the way you were talking about, so that we are the highest authority that we're listening to, especially if we have or are surrounded by toxic family members or people that want to throw their opinions. Something amazing happens if there's friends out there that are scared to take this journey. I say leap with both feet, because something amazing happens when you get to a place where you can detox from social media, you can sit with yourself in silence and like your own company and like who you are, because then you become a lot less concerned about what everybody else thinks, so that you can hear yourself and use your own answers, because honestly we know ourselves best. And what I love about your work as a counselor is it seems like that's what you're helping people do, is know themselves best. It's beautiful work.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. It's very kind.
Yeah, it's good work, it's good work. So what and a good fit, okay? So what qualities, how do you know someone's a good fit for you as a therapist? Say you've never been before and you're a little terrified and you found one on say BetterHelp, or you found one on LinkedIn. What should we be looking for in a good therapeutic fit that's going to actually help us grow and gain some forward momentum?
First of all, if you allow me, I'd just like to as you said, circle back a second, just address um, one of the statements that you made about disconnectedness, and that is that there is, by virtue of all this real-time, immediate connectivity, a kind of tribalism that has formed. Digitization has brought us back to kind of an unconscious collective, as
Mm.
Jung would put it, and where we almost and people are driven to live their whole lives by what other people think.
Mm.
So just to add that to what you were saying, so what do we look for in a therapist is what you've asked. It's always a good thing to make this as simple and as fundamental as possible. So you right away from the physical, emotional, situational uh, um, task that you're facing, that there's two sets of feelings. You don't expect a therapist. A therapist is another struggling human being with skills, with experience, and so you're looking for chemistry. You're talking a little bit about yourself spontaneously, and you're just feeling your way through the sensation, the feelings of whether that person is really getting what you're saying, and you can quiz them a bit. And I'm saying this, repeat it back to me. What do you think it really means? Who do you think I am? And so I think you use that exploration as an opportunity to practice the very things that you want to learn. Some people are very submissive, and they get overwhelmed by the situational authority of a therapist or the title. What you have to have is a good feeling. If you don't have a good feeling, you're going to be wasting your time. So you
Mm.
start from the very basic encounter, acquaintance, and you build slowly and you breathe deeply. And maybe you want to take advantage of a complimentary session, and maybe you want to pay for the next session, and take your time and do it right.
What I love that you said is you just gave people permission to look at their therapist as a human being as well, with skills in the clinical therapeutic arena and training, but you have the absolute permission to ask them, hey, can you repeat back to me what I just said? And I love that you mentioned chemistry, because it is a relationship, and it may be a long-term relationship, and that boom kind of moment does need to be there. I've met with some clinicians where I knew it was a no. And Jessica says digital intervention between human connection is a derivative form of connection. Hey, Jessica, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today, my friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, and sometimes if one doesn't fit or feel good, I love that. You have permission to feel good in a therapeutic session, even if you might be bringing up some heavy stuff that may have happened to you. You have permission to feel good. You have permission to ask questions, and you have permission to look at it like a relationship that can drastically improve your life. I've had some amazing therapists, one in particular coming to mind right now intuitively. She was a therapist for highly sensitive people. And we ran our 2 years. I worked with her for 2 years, but absolutely phenomenal in helping me find that self-respect that we were talking about. A story for another day. She had told me in January, she was like, Lisa, you're in a mystical spiritual cult. And Teddy, I told her, I said, I'm too smart for that. That was in January. By December, I was calling her going, I'm in a spiritual cult and they're all after me and I need some help. She's like, you don't listen. So listen to your therapist too. They usually know what they're talking about if you've picked the right fit. So finding the right therapist. I love the fact too that you said it can be overwhelming. There's that authoritative figure there. And I would add too, to tell the truth. That's your place, to be able to say, I'm struggling. I spent 20 years in the corporate arena, climbing the ladder, getting the success, looking polished on the surface, all the pretty pictures on all social media. And I was suffering behind the scenes. And I didn't tell anybody because I knew, even in the clinical arena, I knew what to say to make it sound like I was performing fine, right? I was performing fine. So long term, what makes the therapeutic relationship actually work? What should somebody want from their counselor or clinical advisor?
Well, I think that first of all, the depth and the quality of your experience and your commitment to your own work is it's never ordinary to receive that from a person, and the work really shows in very valuable, important things that anybody can learn from. So, thank you very much for that. I think that it's really about coming to an understanding of the reality of certain things, and one of them is that your life has been an active, live, organic process for a good while when you get to a point where you want to see a therapist. And so it isn't really as much, I think, for most people. Now, of course, there's very unusual people and unusual situations, but I think for the most part, one can safely generalize in saying that we want to start removing, like in creating a great sculpture, everything that doesn't feel like us. And in doing that, we start to tune into the things that come naturally to us. And by definition, the therapist isn't in the rest of your life. So you have a chance to do that without any kind of commentary or ongoing criticism. And over time in the therapeutic relationship, as in life, your true self starts to emerge and have a presence. And it's up to the therapist to be wide enough and deep enough and lovingly accepting enough and respectful enough to stay out of your way, which can be difficult to do, at certain moments. So in the end, I think it's really about the therapist using their own skills, like the evolved ones that you have, in order to to create a safe container, and I use that word abstractly, so that people can really explore who they are and have confidence in their therapist not to judge them for some of what might be delicate for them to express.
I love that. And I love that you said get out of their way so that they can continue to expand, right? Let them expand at their own pace, at their own rate. Be the safe container, set the container. Don't hold it all, don't metabolize it all, but be the safe container that you set up where people can go on that amazing exploration of who they are underneath all of that block of marble, right? It's like a little bit ads and ads and ads over time. And then we've got to chisel all of what's not the roles, the identities, the labels. We talk about that a lot on my social media accounts, roles, identity, performance, all of that. So I love that your philosophy is to create that space where people can excavate themselves, find that beautiful sculpture underneath everything that's been piled onto them without getting in their way or hindering that growth. Teddy, I think that's rare in a lot of cases. So you say that healing isn't passive. Healing isn't passive. What do you hope clients bring? So we've been talking about what the counselor's responsibility is, kind of, but what do the clients need to bring? What makes you a good client in order to do the excavation and get the expansion and the growth?
Well, it's again related to the perspective of the situation. So as a client, you bring you want to keep from bringing unrealistic expectation. I'm saying that again. So I use the term caveat emptor, buyer beware. And in my work, I am frequently asking clients for authorization to ask questions. I don't want there to be any misunderstandings. We are dealing with trillions of different things. So to the extent that we can simplify them and operate them from a simple place, we want to set the client up to make the most impactful change by changing the least, because a lot of us, we have to operate on autopilot. We can't create a new personality or persona. To some extent, we can't even create a new convincing appearance. And so what you want to do is take a top-down view of what's happening in a person's life and show them the one sort of bowling pin they can move a couple of inches over that will enable them to have a higher probability of rolling a strike. So to speak. And so you're going to find with me, I'm jargon free. I know a lot of the material, but I try to adapt myself to the person's language that I'm sitting in front of, so they feel mirrored and paced and understood. So the client is going to recognize a lot in what I continue to say, because they're the ones that inform me of it. And the more comfortable they are with our language and our rapport, the more they're going to be able to set that aside and look at, geez, what can I really do with my partner in this situation tomorrow? Or how can I handle my boss so I don't feel like a well-used welcome mat, which 20 years in the corporate world, you know all about. So I think that a big part of relating to clients is dignification. That you are in the being business, Mr. Ms. Client, Mrs. Client. You're in the being business, not the doing business. And none of these things and themes, important though they may be to your day and to your life, define who you are as an immediately respectful, respectable, respectful person. And I want to credit Gabor Mate, and the myth of normal in saying that you may be having as a client a lot of uncomfortable reactions that are really a sign of health and not distress. Health about how people treat each other, healthy reaction, how friends can sometimes really backbite and compete with you just to have you participate in your own life. So Gabor has been very effective at letting people know that you're having uncomfortable reactions because parts of you were really healthy and they're being impacted by unhealthy phenomena and behavior in our culture.
That are our greatest teachers sometimes,
They're our
right?
greatest teachers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And you said the word dignity. The reason I wrote Notes from a Certified Madwoman and why that memoir is coming out first, because there are 3 others behind it, was because I wanted to give an insider's perspective on the psychiatric arena as a psychiatric patient. And I do think there's a lot of loss of dignity. And I do think some of what happens in trying to help is inhumane. And so I really wanted to give that insider's perspective. So thank you to you for having a client sitting in front of you that you want that mutual respect. You've mentioned that word many, many times, and that you are getting out of their way so that they can grow and expand, and treating them no matter what their brain is built and designed like, with dignity. That means a lot. So thank you. It's good to know you guys are out there.
That's
So
very kind of you to say.
yeah, it's important. It's so important. What mindset or willingness, and I love the word willingness, because willingness can immediately put us in a higher vibration than shame, guilt, or fear. But what does willingness create how does willingness create the greatest opportunity for change in your eyes, in your perspective and philosophy?
Well, I think that establishing situational willingness with the client is really the therapist's responsibility. And then that minimizes the amount of courage. There's still courage required. It's a lot of new ground. If you've made a really good, solid, empathic connection with the client, they're going to get excited at the idea that they don't have to continue to do the same things as a response to the same stimulation, or especially behaviorally with groups and things these days. So I think, again, that when we work together well with clients, and clients are having successes, even in seemingly trivial things, one thing leads to another, and again, the muscle gets stronger. One of the things I just wanted to go back to that you pointed out about my background. People have sometimes referred to me as a scientist and a priest, and the most common response I get from clients is, I really have a sense that you understand what I'm going through. So having a background in systems engineering, self-defense, which is very different from martial arts, it's like 65 years worth, it allows you to, you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot, you've been bounced around, and so you can hold people's chaotic energy, and they feel that safety, they feel that balance, and it encourages them to have confidence in you. And often the confidence that you show to the client, that you demonstrate to the clients, I'm here with the only 60 minutes or 2 hours of my life that I have, really moves them into a different state of attachment. And so I haven't generally had to work with people that long, because they get it. And in the end, they realize that it's up to them to set the mandate and to fulfill it by their own standards, that I not only don't need to necessarily understand or explain, I don't even necessarily need to know about. It's their own private, sacred business.
I love that. I love that, because some stories are. I, as a fellow martial artist, and I teach trauma informed self defense and domestic violence shelters as a legacy to my grandmother, who we lost in a DV situation. I
Oh, I'm
believe
so sorry.
It's so intergenerational trauma. It's fine. I'm the cycle breaker, so we're doing it.
Wow.
But I believe every woman needs to learn self-defense. What did you gain? What did you personally gain from knowing and learning self-defense? And there is something to be said about, especially for sexual assault and sexual abuse survivors, being able to protect your physical body with your hands and elbows and knees and feet and legs and head. So what did you gain the most out of learning self-defense?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before, and just in quite the way that you just have. So I'll tell you what the answer to that is. It's understanding the whole situation. And what that means is that I'm looking down the road. My eyes are moving. I'm looking at the realm of consolidated, integrated personal energy that I'm feeling from my colleagues, my clients, people in the community where I live, and I'm seeing it coming. And there's no chance whatsoever that this couldn't happen to me. And anybody can get got, no matter how. Bruce Lee used to say, God rest his soul, I'm more afraid of the person who practiced one technique 100,000 times than a person who practices 10,000 techniques 5 times. So what did I learn? I learned that it changes you. I learned that under no circumstances, no matter how outgunned and how outmanned I am I helpless. And I learned that I don't want to live with the consequences of anything I'm capable of doing to someone. And so I learned the highest respect for life. And in 25 countries and 500,000 miles on the road, I've broken up a number of altercations, but I've never been in one.
I love that. What's interesting is our journeys are so parallel there. I stepped on the mat. I was raised in the swamps of Louisiana, where you went and fought each other with your fists to conflict resolution. That's how you did it. That you may not have a beer afterwards, be friends, who knows. So the first time I stepped on the mat, I wanted to learn how to fight. I wanted to be a badass. I wanted to know how to do it for real. And 11 years later, I don't want to fight anymore. And one skill it gave me was the ability to dissipate aggression as it comes up. So it's an interesting change that happens as you go through the discipline of self-defense and martial arts. And you're right. I no longer care to fight and have the energetic capacity, because I belted in karate, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Filipino Kusho, which is very energetic. So energetically able to dissipate energy in conflict resolution on a good day. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it every day, but it happens sometimes. So willingness creates the greatest opportunity for change. I love that. I think willingness is a very overlooked emotional intelligence skill. I think observation is not neutral. As a scientist, you know that. It's quantum physics, it's quantum mechanics. The minute we say, I am willing to change, even if you're not ready, the minute you say, I am willing to change, guess what? It's already working, right? Because observation, you observed it, you acknowledge it, is not neutral. And we know that from the split theory and quantum physics and quantum mechanics. One line from your profile stood out to me, and I love this. It's actually on my Facebook profile in a different form, but it is, to thy own self be true. What does that phrase mean for you today?
That is another enormous question. So I'll answer it in 2 ways, for the purpose and for me. So as we evolve and become more effective, more mature, more satisfied, happier, and realizing that pretty much has to do with us and not others.
Mm.
we learn only to answer to ourselves,
Mhm.
and we learn what happens when we don't, and we start answering to others, which is a kind of slavery. But
Yeah.
it gets more evolved in terms of self, because the self that we think of, the I, the me, the you, is never really born. As the Buddhists have known for thousands of years, there's no permanent, unchanging self. And so or if you read Tolle, Eckhart Tolle, the New
Mhm.
Earth, you are continuously logically filtered and intermingled with everything that is, everything that was, everything that can be. And so that's another reason to focus on what comes naturally, because even the apparent objectification that takes place in science comes through your nervous system. And in the end, when you see that glass on the table, there is no inalienable, permanent, absolute existence of that. It's more of an agreement between nervous systems. And I'll go one step further. I think that our view of the cosmos and the Big Dipper and the Crab Nebula is something that we are primed to in the genome, and that it's not the only universe and not the only story that's viable. It's all subjective. And this is why I think today we're seeing in humanity that groups aren't going to do it for people. Membership isn't going to do it for people. We've got to stop at some point and recognize that part of life is lived alone by virtue of the fact, and we have to make peace with ourselves. We're not going to
Absolutely.
be able to rely on groups or humanity to do so. And the great Groucho Marx said, I wouldn't be a member of any group that would have me. And I think that's what he had in mind. I think
I
that's what
learned
he
that
had in
the hard
mind.
way.
Yeah.
Look, something happens too as you go on this healing journey, as we're talking about. The toxicity kind of takes itself out, sometimes naturally, sometimes by you setting boundaries. But what gets replaced is people that are on a higher vibration that can support and inspire and encourage you. But on some days, even with the best inner circle, it is just you and you, and this better be a comfortable and safe place to be, for sure. So I think, again, getting to that place where you dig who you are, you know how you tick and click, you know where your wounds are, so you know where you're going to get rewounded, and you can articulate that to the people who love, care about, and support you so they can better support you, is just a place of absolute mastery and brilliance. Liking who you are changes everything. It really does. But you've got to know who that is. So you're right. On some days, it is just us and us alone. And can you stand under the tree, butt naked by yourself, and be okay with everything that you are? I think that's so beautiful. So, as we wrap up, Teddy, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. And I think you're going to give people so many good tips as they segue into work with a new counselor or therapist, or switching, or stopping even and listening to themselves. Thank you for being a counselor that gives your clients choice. I think for many of us trauma survivors, our choices were taken from us. So being given that autonomy, being given that choice is so empowering and so needed. And we need about 100,000 more of you, my friend. So before we close, we always ask every guest on Notes from the Edge one question. And the question is, what did you perform in order to survive? And what happened when you dropped the performance?
I think that ultimately coming from a background of insecure attachment, was being played like a piano rather than playing the piano. So that work continues every day. That work continues every day. And given what you said about your martial arts background, which is a pretty scrappy background. Seeing the whole picture means that no matter what's going on in the moment, you don't want to live with the consequences of something that you've done that prevents somebody else from living their life. And that for me became an emotion of never being helpless. That's what I needed. And I was attacked by a well-trained German Shepherd once that I neutralized in 20 seconds to my surprise. But that kind of was a test, and I passed. So I am concluding by saying that each one of us has to be the loudest cheerleader in our own cheering section, or we can't really righteously expect anybody to cheer at all.
Oh, and with that, my friends, we are going to open the floor before we close out. We've got Ike, we've got Jeffrey, we've got Jessica. Before we close out, does anyone have any questions? Teddy, I think we can't even add more to that. We've got the end there. It was
That's kind of you to say.
So beautiful. All right. Thank you for joining us today, Teddy. I really appreciate the gentleness and the thoughtfulness that you've brought to the conversations that we need to be having. That's the whole goal of Notes from the Edge. My friends out there, if you haven't asked yourself yet this question, ask it today. What did you perform in order to survive? And what might be possible in your life if you dropped that performance? I'm your host, Lisa Lacy, here with Teddy Ingles, and we will see you next time. Welcome to the Edge.